Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. The last video was why isn't cycling normal in London? This is like the second part to that. It's called Why Drivers Should Want Cycle Lanes. The original channel is called Jay Foreman. Make sure after you watch my reaction, you go over there, head over to the original channel, show the original channel some love, hit like on that video. The links to that will be in the description section down below. We're going to find out why drivers should want cycle lanes. And this is about London, England. We're going to check it out.
There's a war going on London streets right now. Two tribes, two wheels versus four wheels. Bicyclists versus carists.
It's a war.
Speaking personally as both a cyclist and a driver, I hate myself. But should I? Is it true that to provide infrastructure for one tribe, you have to screw things up for the other? Or can we learn to live side by side?
They figured it out in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands in general.
Or one behind the other? Or weaving in and out of each other? As discussed in the previous episode, we've now got lovely cycle superhighways. But unfortunately, progress for cycling infrastructure has been grinding somewhat to a halt. The current mayor, Sadiq Khan, and I'm sorry to say this because I really like him, has been pretty rubbish for cycling. He's cancelled cycling projects left, right and straight down the middle. His only achievement so far has been the quiet ways. The quiet ways are a benign and barely noticeable network of signposts and tipex guiding cyclists onto less busy roads. But it's hard to imagine who will benefit from them. Not timid new cyclists, because they still have to share with cars, and not experienced cyclists, because they won't want to go the wiggly squiggly long way round. So why is cycling being watered down in the capital? There are several different groups whose fault it is. In order to build cycle superhighways, TfL needs the cooperation of London's 32 local boroughs. The streets belong to them, and not all of them are enthusiastic about bikes. Kensington and Chelsea, the Slytherin of the London boroughs, has been the most obstructive of them all.
The Slytherin of London boroughs, he says.
Kensington and Chelsea, the Slytherin of the London boroughs, has been the most obstructive of them all. CS9, which in the original proposal was meant to go all the way to central London, was cut back in 2016 to stop here at Kensington Olympia.
Why?
CS3, which was originally planned to go all the way to Acton, now stops here at Lancaster Gate. Coincidence?
Why?
And it's not just the boroughs halting progress. Delays and cuts are also being caused by the curious Royal Parks Commission. The Royal Parks of London are technically private land belonging to the Queen, not the local boroughs. So change here has always been slow and reluctant.
Electricity.
When the East-West Cycle Superhighway was announced, the Royal Parks dithered for so long over which way it should go through St James's Park, TfL were forced to publish this embarrassing map with the route still not decided, long after construction had started. In a further poke in the tyres, with the route so long over which way it should go through St James's Park, TfL were forced to publish this embarrassing map with the route still not decided, long after construction had started.
That's funny.
In a further poke in the tyres to cyclists, the Royal Parks installed speed bumps in Hyde Park on what used to be a really popular cycle route, hitting cyclists where it hurts the most. Their balls. And the Church of Our Lady of Grace in St Edward in Chiswick has been calling on their parishioners to literally pray for CS9 not to be built outside their church. So why do all these groups of PS9 not to be built outside their church?
What?
So,
well, that was crazy.
Why do all these groups of people hate cyclists so much?
Right.
What's their beef? Why don't they like cycle lanes?
That's crazy. The church gonna just pray to stop the cycle lanes. Like that's. I mean, I guess that's one way to use your power, but you know, I mean, whatever you want to do, right?
What's wrong with bicycle infrastructure according to them? Why do they have a problem with bicyclists? What for them is the reason that cycle infrastructure is such a bad thing? They give several different reasons. This man said that a cycle path would spoil the village-like atmosphere of Chiswick, but it was hard to hear him over the roar of traffic.
The British-like atmosphere of what?
Spoil the village-like atmosphere of Chiswick, but it was hard to hear him over the roar of traffic. Shopkeepers in Walthamstow complained that the Mini Holland scheme, which removed car parking spaces, closed off rat runs and made the streets far more cycle-friendly, would cause all the shops to close down. But in fact, the opposite has happened and brought the area to life. So,
Yep, I
Mrs.
figured.
Panhandle from West Ruislip says,
Dear Unfinished London, why should the government spend millions of pounds on cyclists when it's us drivers who pay our road tax?
So it says, Dear Unfinished London. So I wonder if his channel was called Unfinished London originally, and then he changed the channel name. Maybe if you're regular viewer, if you've seen a lot of my videos or you've been on my channel for a while, you probably noticed that I've also changed my channel name. It was called like Charlie's Place originally. Then it was called like Charlie's Place Reactions or something. Then I changed it to like American Guy Reacts, and then now it's CharlieVest, final form.
The government spend millions of pounds on cyclists when it's us drivers who pay our road tax, and cyclists pay nothing.
Good accent, by the way. He sounds like a proper British girl.
F you, Mrs. Panhandle. First of all, if that were true, that would be a good thing. Cars produce way more wear and tear on roads than bikes do. And second of all, it's not true. Road tax is not there to fund roads. It's an income stream for the Treasury like any other, and they can spend it on whatever they like. You wouldn't say freeloading pedestrians don't deserve street lamps.
It's Tom Scott.
You can spend it on whatever they like. You wouldn't say freeloading.
Yeah, Tom Scott. He emailed me actually. I did a reaction video to his the video. It's the world's only float through McDonald's. Go check it out if you want. He emailed me though because I didn't provide a proper amount of reaction, so it didn't quite fit the definition of fair use. So cool guy. He's just like, hey man, this and that, no big deal. He let me keep the video up or whatever. It's not monetized, I think, or if it is, I think he probably gets the ad revenue for it. But great guy. I suggest you go check out his channel. He has amazing stuff, by the way. And if you are watching, Tom, shout out to you, man. And I do appreciate you taking the time to send that email for sure.
Loading pedestrians don't deserve street lamps. Mrs. Panhandle's anti-cyclist attitude is sadly quite a common one, and this is not helped by the media. According to nearly every bike-related article you read about in the newspapers, cyclists are dangerous and irresponsible tearaways whose fault it usually is when an accident happens. And if they choose not to wear a helmet, well, they only had it coming.
Maybe it's just the people that's not paying attention. Like, because I did some reactions to like the in Amsterdam, like how to survive Dutch bikes, how to survive, this and that. Different videos talking about don't just walk into the damn bike path. You might get hit, right? So maybe that's what's going on, and they're just blaming the people on the bikes instead of just taking responsibility for their own lack of awareness of their surroundings, I guess, and what they're doing or whatever, right? I've never got hit by a bike or a car or nothing. I just, tend to like look around. If there's a bike coming or a car coming, I just wait a minute and then I pass. It's simple.
This really annoys me, actually. The sort of people who say, why don't you wear a helmet, are usually the sort of people who've never ridden a bike in their lives, and they're only saying it because they want to absolve themselves of all responsibility for cyclist safety on the road. If you really want to make cycling safer, instead of giving everyone a helmet, give them a piece of paper saying, for God's sake, never ever go on the left of a lorry, because that's where almost every cycle death happens. By all means, wear a helmet if you want to. It could save your life if you're unlucky enough to land headfirst into anything, but as for making helmets compulsory, it doesn't make cycling safer, and if you don't believe me, look at Australia, a country where the wearing of helmets is mandatory and hardly anyone cycles, and then compare that to the Netherlands or Denmark, where everyone rides a bike and no one wears a helmet. You don't make an activity safer by discouraging people from doing it,
Yep.
Whilst it's easy to dismiss these complaints as bunkum, there is one genuine, impossible to deny disadvantage that does come with the building of cycle superhighways.
I like this guy's videos. Just laying down, falling, laying in the middle of the street, filming. Like, it's just interesting. It's engaging content.
Yes, it's true. Some cycle lanes, especially the good ones, do indeed take away space that used to be available for cars. But unfortunately, there's nowhere else practical for these cycle lanes to go. Some audacious architects have come up with some innovative suggestions for where else to put cycle paths other than the surface streets. TfL proposed building CS3 high up on the Westway, conveniently crossing Kensington and Chelsea without having to ask their permission. But this was cancelled in 2017 because it was impractical and terrifying and no one was ever going to use it. Norman Foster, the architect responsible for Boris Island, proposed a network of elevated cycle paths called Sky Cycle, floating above London's railway lines.
What?
This was even more unnecessarily elaborate, not to mention phenomenally expensive.
Yeah.
And finally, in my opinion, the underwhelmingest of them all, a series of lifts around the Strand going down to disused tube tunnels converted into cycle paths with the deeply uninspiring name The Underline, which I can think of at least 12 better names than. It's not rocket science. In cities like London, where the streets aren't getting any wider, cycle paths do have to go on the road. If only we could redesign London from scratch. Imagine if our streets were wide enough for cars, buses and bikes. That would be just perfect, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it?
Sure would.
Stevenage, 32 miles north of London. A new town built from scratch in the 60s, where planners weren't limited by space.
Okay.
There are beautiful, segregated cycle paths everywhere. But look.
Kind of like in the Netherlands, they have the underpasses for the cycle paths to go under the road. That is really, really cool. I like it. We don't have that here.
Empty. The good people of Stevenage have no incentive to use their cycle paths. Their roads are just too acceptable. They don't get massive traffic jams even in rush hour, and all the shops have got free car parking, so...
Too acceptable, he says.
Why would they bother with the bike? What we learned from Stevenage is you don't just have to encourage people onto their bikes, you have to encourage them out of their cars. But what's wrong with cars? I'll tell you what's wrong with cars. Cars are incredibly space inefficient. That's what's wrong with cars. Look how many people are moving through the road when they're all in their cars. Not a lot. But watch what happens if you put them on bikes. Ooh! And it's not just bikers who benefit. Every single one of those new cyclists is someone no longer taking up space on the tube, on the bus, or in a car.
Yep.
Yes, even drivers benefit from cycle lanes in the long term. There will always be people that have to drive, like delivery vans and construction traffic and ambulances and giraffes in transit, and they'll all get where they're going much faster when the road is being used only by people that have a f***ing good excuse for being there.
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, for sure, the more people in bikes, well, naturally, the less people in cars.
By the way, I haven't even been talking about pollution. It almost goes without saying that cars pollute and bikes don't. But you know what? Even if all cars were electric, they'd still be just as horribly space inefficient. This isn't about air quality, it's about sustainability. But it's also about air quality. So hurting drivers is not merely a byproduct of improving cycling, it's a desired effect. Saying that a cycle scheme doesn't work because drivers are unhappy, it's a bit like saying that a diet doesn't work because it's making you hungry. London is not Stevenage. Its population is expected to hit 10 million by 2030. So if we're going to make room for everybody, cycling has to become more normal than driving.
10 million, huh? In London? I thought they had more than that already.
That's why I'm worried that cycle progress isn't progressing. There's still loads more to do. Huh? Ah. What was that?
That's terrible.
So, to sum up, things are getting better for cycling, but not better enough. Perhaps the most troubling thing about the cycle superhighways is that name, superhighways. It makes them sound like they're the best they could possibly be.
Yeah, it just sounds dumb. I mean, cycling superhighway.
Like they're rare and exceptional. Whereas if you show them to a Dutch person, they'd just think they're normal. In fact, they're the bare minimum. London's cycling revolution is
They said, in fact, they're just the bare minimum.
unfinished. These cycle lanes won't realise their incredible potential until they're everywhere. The superhighways won't be super until there's nothing super about them.
Yep.
Ow! Ow!
Oh, that's funny.
I can't feel my legs! Ow!
All right, guys. That was pretty cool. Let me know about that air pollution, though. Is there more pollution in London than there is in, say, the Netherlands, right? So go ahead and hit like, hit subscribe on the original channel. Links will be in the description section down below. And you guys have a super fun, awesome day. Take care. I will see you in the next one. Later.